Right, so good morning. I'm just doing a quick uh, review of my CD collection of Dave Van Ronk. Basically, I had kind of gone through all of his Greenwich Village 60s to mid 70s stuff, and I was really interested in what he was doing in the sort of 80s and 90s, which is when, unfortunately, most people outside of the Greenwich Village folk scene had kind of forgot about him, but he actually has done some really amazing stuff. Um, a lot of these CDs here, they're not in print in this country, and they actually cost me quite a bit of money to buy second hand from America and Europe on Amazon, but worth it just through sort of second hand vendors, but really worth it because there's some really interesting stuff, and if you're a fan of his, I really do suggest trying to get hold of some. So the first is Two Sides of Dave Van Ronk. The first 12 songs are from the 1960s, and but 13 to 21 were recorded in London in 1982. And although they're songs that he recorded before, I think here they do sound really good. Dave said in an interview once that he performed his best when he was under pressure, and he recorded the second half of this album, songs 13 to 21, all in one evening, and just only in a few takes, and they're just really, really good. And his version of Candyman and Cocaine with the scat singing is just absolutely brilliant, and the guitar is really on form, and as is his singing, and I think they're just as good as the recordings that he had done on earlier albums, if not better. And the second one, which is quite rare, is Going Back to Brooklyn, which was his only album of original songs. And he kind of did this album, he was nearing the age of 50, and he was kind of hoping to make some money and retire from music, so he decided to do sorry, I probably should have explained that earlier. He was basically made a career of interpreting other people's songs and doing his own versions of other people's songs. So he kind of put this album out hoping that other people would do the same. But unfortunately, it never happened. So although this was meant as an album that he could have made lots of money from, it never happened. So he had to continue recording, which he didn't mind, but I think he would have preferred to have had a hit and made some money and just been able to have retired, but it didn't really happen that way for him. But this is an incredible album, and the best song on there by far is Another Time and Place, and if you YouTube that, it's just a brilliant, brilliant song. Probably the best of his own material. It's just such a really, really nice song. And yeah, you should definitely look it up. In fact, I might actually put a link to it in the comment section because it's awesome. And this is an even rarer one. This is an album that he did with a jug band of his own version of the Peter and the Wolf song, which does have his best version of Green Green Rocky Road on it, because it actually contains other instruments, I think a mandolin and a stand-up bass, and it just sounds absolutely fantastic. And the song Foolish Frog probably is his best jazz arrangement, and it even has his wife doing some singing on it. Foolish Frog as well, it's really distinctive because it's got such a brilliant clarinet solo, and I think it's probably the best example of what he tried to do in terms of replicating the Dixieland, particularly Jelly Roll Morton big band sound. So if you do get a chance to get hold of this, you should definitely get this album. Green Green Rocky Road and Foolish Frog are definitely worth having. It's definitely worth having for those songs alone. And this one is a compilation of songs all from the late 50s with Tell Old Bill, which Tell Old Bill was recorded in about 1957, 1958. And those last songs, A Garden State Stomp and Two Sleepy People in the Fresno Shuffle, they were all produced in the mid-80s to early 90s, so this has got a complete retrospective of every decade of his career. He released his first album in 1958 and his last one in 2001, so he had a really, really long career, and there's lots of stuff out there that I still haven't been able to find because it's out of print, but this is a compilation done on his friend Sam Charters, who was a musician and author and record producer, and this was done on his album, on his record label. It's second-hand, so it's a bit beaten up, but I'm pleased to have got it because it's out of print in the UK, so yeah, it's nice to have. And this is To All My Friends in Far-Flung Places, and this is a cover of songs from musicians that Dave Van Ronk knew personally, and there's 14 songs on each CD, so there's really a lot of material on here. I still haven't had the chance to listen to it properly, but the ones that I do really like are his version of A Sailor's Prayer and Four Strong Winds by Ian Tyson, and I'll put a link to Four Strong Winds again in the comment section for you guys to listen to. But yeah, I only got this about a week ago, so I still haven't been through all of it properly, but I'm looking forward to. It's good, what I've heard so far. And this was his last studio album. It's entirely there aren't any solo songs with it with Dave. It's all done with a big jazz band, and it covers all sorts of jazz pretty much from the 20s up until cool jazz and bebop. So this was the music that Dave Van Ronk really wanted to play when he was little and when he wanted to make his living playing. So it's him. He made this album right before he died, and this was his last album really to sort of show his roots and the type of songs that he wanted to play when he was younger, and he wanted to be a jazz musician, which was his ultimate dream. And finally, this came out after his death. This was a recording of his last ever show, and this was recorded, I believe, on Saturday on Halloween, and on the Thursday of that same week he had been given a cancer diagnosis, and this was recorded in October 2001, and he died in February 2002. He was supposed to play 2 45-minute long sets over the weekend at this venue, but when he arrived he said would he be able to make a copy, just be able to record one long set directly from the event, and they said yes. So I think people knew that something was up, but this is a really brilliant album because of the situation. He decided to start talking about his life in between the songs. So in between each song there's like a 5-10 minute monologue of him going through his life again from the early 50s all the way up until now. And it's, if you're a fan of Dave Van Ronk and you like him, it's really worth a listen. It's a brilliant song. It's a brilliant album, sorry. So yeah, so it's been really good to have found those albums, because Dave Van Ronk he only gets a lot of press really for the fact that he knew Bob Dylan and he knew Joni Mitchell and he knew Leonard Cohen and Joan Baez, but after that had gone in sort of like the late 60s, he did have a whole other career, but unfortunately never really got mentioned much, and when he was alive no one really bothered to ask him. So it's nice to be able to have those albums, just to be able to sort of hear from the man himself, and it still is a record of what he wanted to do as a musician and what he was really willing to try and attempt, and it shows that there was more to him than just being somebody who knew and played with Bob Dylan for about 1.5 years back in the 60s, you know, there's something that showed that he was still going in the 80s, 90s, and even in the early noughties. So if you get the chance, you should definitely try to get hold of those albums if you can, because they are really interesting to listen to. Okay, cool. That's about it. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.